So, Phil, welcome to our enrichment series, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to sharing with you a little thoughtful insights about circular economy, what it's about, how it applies to individuals and organizations and corporations, nonprofits, startups, the whole nine, and talk about things that we can do to engage with this and why it matters to all of us. So I hope that coming in, people have at least an idea or some experience, or just um, coming in completely cold could be great too. And I hope to be able to shift some of that perception so that we can really be clear about what it is, what the promises are, and that sort of thing. So I am founder and CEO of Through My Networks. We're an impact investing and advisory services firm that works with early stage companies, primarily early stage startups that are providing solutions to circular economy challenges, circular economy, regenerative economy, waste to value, all different variations of a theme that talk about the fundamental issue. It is that the planet that we know it, while it is immense and abundant, it is not infinite, and the resources are not infinite. And once you understand that the resources on the planet are finite, and it's the only planet in the known universe amongst literally billions of stars and solar systems, which we realize that it's the only planet that we know of that can sustain life as we know it. It gives us a bit of an imperative to think about how we're going to be on the planet, how we're going to engage with the planet, and how our models, our business models, and our operational models actually work inside of a fixed environment. When NASA astronauts go to space and they look back from on the planet from the moon, or from however far out they are, they talk about the overview effect. The fact that you see this planet, this little blue marble in this immense blackness of space with all this around it. And it gives them a perspective of how small the planet is and how we're all contained inside of this one large ecosystem. And it's important from that perspective, or it's a sort of impression. They give great impressions from that perspective about how we're all in this together. Another interesting, though more practical revelation around circular economy thinking was something that happened to me a little over 10 years ago when I was listening to the head of sustainability and the head of supply chain for Coca-Cola. And they were doing a webinar talking about why they were focused on sustainability and circularity in their business. And a simple point of that talk stuck with me and was something that was unable to pull out of my brain pretty much ever since. They said, we looked at our goals for sales over the next 10 to 20 years and realized that we needed to make a change in our business because there wasn't enough sugar on the planet to make the Coca-Cola that we needed to make to meet those goals inside of that timeline. Our projections and our current way of doing business broke the business model. It wasn't that there wasn't enough sugar that they could provide, or that they had to double the amount of sugar. They just said there's not enough sugar on the planet, and there's not a feasible way to do this. And it got me thinking. From there, I listened to companies like Bunge Oil, who is a major corporate manufacturer of food oils, cooking oils in particular. We talked to one of their heads of production, and he said the company has a 20 to 30-year plan on where they get the land for the agriculture, where they get the water for their crops to be able to support the growth that they are expected. And they have been scouring the planet to have enough arable land and water in quantity to be able to continue production in a sustainable, predictable way. So this is all about maintenance of business, and then open them up to the real issues that are around impacts, environments, and ecosystems that give us this balance of the impact returns and the financial returns that we're going to talk about. So in this presentation, I'll go through some of the models that we use to identify the difference between these impact and financial returns, and so that everybody's operating from their same language. The other thing I wanted to do is make sure that we loaded in some Xapa tips. I had Xapa tips for my Xapa card, and I'm trying to weave them into the conversation so that it's a little fun and it's a little interesting. So the first thing I wanted to do was demystify the term circular economy, because often when people hear this, they just first think something, I don't know if you would call it woke or green, or they think about recycling, they think about trash, they think about upcycling, and all those are components of what we're talking about. But the fundamental issue is to say, we want to understand the challenge and we want to explore the opportunity of what this circular economy is thinking, right? We want to take a look at the traditional model, or I shouldn't even say traditional model. It is a current model of capitalism that evolved over the past 50 to 75 years, and where we have created a product, we use a product, and then we throw it away. And I say 50 to 100 years because it depends on where you are in the world and how you've done about reusing certain things. But I think most people on the call are familiar with industries like the milk industry in the 1950s, or in certain countries where they still do this, where you have a significant deposit on the packaging material that's used for a product. When the product is delivered to you, or the product's purchased, you consume what the consumable is inside of the product, and then you put the milk bottles back out on the step, or you return the Coca-Cola bottles for your deposit. Now, what's happened over time is that they're for convenience, because of lower costs of shipping and delivery, because of people leaving the deposits on the table and other folks kind of getting the return of the products. There's been a disassociation between people thinking about how they get or consume a product and what happens after it. So this linear take, use, waste, linear economy model, it worked for a component of convenience. But when we think about the bounds of the limitations of that model, we start to run into trouble. And I'm going to put all of my comments in context of conversations that we're having today that have real physical and financial consequences. Just this week, I've had at least 3 conversations with private equity, with family offices, with people who are with government officials, and with businesses that are concerned about the take, use, waste model. And what have I heard consistently? There is too much going into landfill. There is too much going into landfill for the landfill actually to handle it. Space is being limited in landfills. It's not just an urban problem. It's not just a coastal problem. I've heard this problem across the country, from the coasts, red states, blue states, the same problem, because there's better use for land than landfill. And when you have too much of certain types of things in landfill, they become problems. If you have too much organic material in landfill, the landfill is less stable. It emits more methane. It's smellier. It attracts more pests. There are a number of challenges of too much organic material, and by that I mean food waste that goes into landfill. Now, there are challenges for separating food waste from the waste stream and getting that into something where you can do composting or anaerobic digestion or other ways of taking the food and turning it into something of value, so it's not sitting into the landfill. There are also limitations of when we take liquid products and flush them down the drain, whether it's consumers, whether it's restaurants, whether it's industrial. I'm working with a company right now that's looking at industrial food waste, and the limits of being able to move that industrial food waste from where you process your chicken or your dairy to actually where that needs to go. It can't go down the drain. The wastewater treatment plants can't handle it. You can't dump it into your backyards. There's all these problems. People are looking for real solutions to real problems simply because of capacity issues. Before you talk about the cost of shipping, the cost of management, the impact on the environment, and all those things, there's a real business value. There's a real environmental value, whether you think about it because you want the environment to be pristine, or whether because you want to be able to go out and hunt and fish like it's been our culture to do on some of these lands, that we're pressing into, whether you want to go see wild animals in the wild on wild land, or whether you want to see that land develop for some other purpose. The lowest use of that is for temporary disposal of waste that we didn't need to have in the first place. So if we can optimize the process of the creation and management of the delivery of products and services so that we minimize waste, so that we're better stewards of our resources, then we can be really exploring the opportunity, the potential of circular economy, uh, waste to value, and sustainability type solutions. So I'm encouraging everyone right now to suspend what they thought they know about circular economy or sustainability, and think about what the opportunity might be. So I talk about the linear economy model. That's the traditional model. We have some limited resources, and we destroy value of goods that actually might have other life. Clothing that might get thrown away. A lot of people will deliver that to Goodwill or something similar, to a secondhand store or something similar. And not only does that extend the value of the product once it's built, but it creates another job, another point in the economy. It doesn't have to be about manufacturing and selling of first run goods. We are seeing an evolution of people, of business models, where people are taking what was someone's waste into and turning it into value. And we've talked a little bit about the environmental impact of linearity, what happens when you get to the landfill, or what happens when you deprive the land of the organic material. One of the things we found is if you're taking organics from the ground and you're moving them somewhere to feed humans, you need to put something back into the soil for the soil to be healthy again. Now, a lot of this has been tackled recently, in recent history, by using chemical-based soil enhancements. We're talking fertilizer, generally speaking, to replenish the soil. But there are ways to replenish soil in a much more natural way, just by changing the approach. Regenerative agriculture is this process. Instead of burrowing in the ground and having rows of crops, you can still be as productive by having different approaches that keep the soil healthy, that sequester carbon in the soil and put the organic and the nutrients back into them. If you build it into a whole circular model and take the waste that would go into landfill, turn that into compost or biochar that you can actually come back and use in the agriculture process itself, now you're replicating a natural cycle at scale so that we can grow the production of food, grow the quantity and quality of food without a whole lot of chemical inputs and all the byproducts of actually this environmental impact that we're talking about. Similarly, because we take what was a very diverse swath of land and turning it to a farmland for monoculture, there were follow-on effects in the loss of other species that actually matter to the health of the soil, the health of the environment, and the maintenance of the ecosystems that we want to be able to go out and hunt and fish, or to experience nature, which have natural processes cleaning up the system, maintaining the environment, as it's done for millennia, right? Hundreds of years, thousands of years with humans growing our numbers, but still being able to sustain ourselves. One of the objectives that we have kind of softly in the work that we do is to say, how do we make sure that the planet is going to be as abundant, as beautiful, as diverse for clean air, water, but also having all these great advancements for the next generations that come along. You know, I'm sure a lot of people have heard the talk about indigenous American tribal thinking ahead of 7 generations ahead of you, not just for yourselves. And it's not just a soft thing. This is an important thing if we want people to live the high quality of life and to see the beautiful things that we've seen in the past, because growth does not mean that it is a win-lose game for having great access to wonderful natural resources. So this is a little bit of the commentary on the environmental impact on linearity. bottom line, we didn't actually think about the implications of the system when we built it. And now that we think about the implications of the system, we realize that we can change the system. We could still have a economic value and significant amount of jobs. We could still have high quality products, and we could still have growth. But growth without limits doesn't work mathematically. It doesn't work scientifically. It defies the laws of physics. So it's something that we really have to think about. So I'm just curious, and if we were in a room, I would ask people what their initial impressions are of these words, because I have a very specific definition, working definition of them, and talk with different practitioners about them to make it really approachable and realistic for the average person who's engaging with this. So from my perspective, a circular economy solution is one that is designed from the beginning to go cradle to cradle. I look at the source materials, I put value into the source materials to create a product. I think about the use of that product, how a product is managed at the end of its life cycle, and how the end use materials are put back into the system such that there is minimal loss throughout the whole circle. About 15 years ago, I worked on a project with a major manufacturer of shampoos and body washes, and that was in salons. And they wanted to do a circular economy program to prove that they could cut out one piece of their supply chain and evaluate what would happen. And what they did was they looked at the bottle caps, the PVC bottle caps, highly recyclable form of plastic, polyvinyl chloride, right? And they just had the people in the salons, when they opened them up to use them, take the bottle cap and they put it in a receptacle, and they brought it back. And they did the math, and they used their existing logistics chains to have backhaul from the salons, from delivery, and brought them back to their manufacturing facility. And then, so there's no additional carbon created, no additional energy invested other than human energy of collecting and bringing things back. But what they found out was they could completely cut out the addition of new plastic into the chain after a few years of doing this, because the stuff they'd already done, the energy they already put into building the product, they could bring it back, they could shred it up into little bits, they could reform them as new caps, and they had a completely self-contained circular model for that component of their supply chain. And then they started looking for other ones. We saw something similarly when we were looking at a major brand name computer company, like who I'm using right now for my laptop, and they were looking about how to do that with their distribution packaging. It wasn't even distribution to consumers; it was internal trays and internal shipping containers. So instead of using corrugated and single-use plastics, they were looking at durable bioplastics and polymers that could be used thousands of times over, and that were designed in a specific format that they could be flexible and that they could be adjusted with changes in product size and definition, so that once you had a certain amount of material in the ecosystem, in the supply chain, you didn't need to add anything more. So that's a circular economy solution. In some areas, you want to actually have something circular, but it's not necessarily realistic. I'll go back to the industrial food waste story. So if I'm raising chickens or cows for dairy, a mom and pop dairy farm generates the milk. They send the milk to the creamery. When the creamery gets processed, when the milk gets processed at the creamery, there's waste. When consumers don't eat all of the food and some of it gets sent back to the creamery, there's waste. Instead of dumping that on the ground, there's value already added, in economic value already added to that finished product. I could turn that into something else. And we're working with a company that turns that into upcycled food products that are high margin, high value, and lead to that waste turning into value. That happens in the city of San Francisco with Regenerosity turning their the food waste that's captured in green bins into compost that can be sold to the agricultural agricultural consumers across the state of California. Similarly, there's a company that we are working with that takes wood waste, whether it's from trimming trees in the city or from old pallets or ground cover that could be fodder for fires, and turns that into biochar that can be sold for similar purposes. So those are really good waste to value solutions. They're not embedded circularly in a circular way inside of a certain company, but it is a bigger way. The loop is more circular than take use waste, because the output of one process is the input of another, and there is minimal waste. This leads to things that are sustainable, as in, if we keep doing things the same way, we can continue business as usual, or innovative business as usual, right? In my mind, the best story about something that's sustainable like this is sustainable aviation fuel derived from carbon capture from the air, powered by solar, right? It then allows me to not worry as much about what the fuel is for the aviation, because the fuel comes from pulling carbon out of the air, converting it into fuel, using renewable energy resources, and then I am not adding to the carbon load of travel. I'm just taking out of what was in the air and I'm putting it back in. Something that is regenerative is something that actually, because of the process of where I am and what I'm doing, it actually makes the ecosystem better, right? These examples of regenerative economy solutions are regenerative agriculture is the first one that comes to mind. Is super easy. Instead of using a linear crop growth model, regenerative agriculture says, I am going to use cover crops to enrich the soil naturally. I'm going to have a certain type of mix of vegetation and a certain type of natural flora and fauna in the ecosystem while I grow my product, whether it's corn or wheat, whether it's I've looked at companies that are growing nuts and fruits inside of what is jungle, what is rainforest, in a way that doesn't disrupt the ecosystem and allows small landholder farmers to grow food for humans while improving the ecosystem, or even restoring the ecosystem if it was degraded. So these are not just kind of out there terms. They're very specific and very measurable in terms of their ability to deliver value to circular economy. So I'm trying to go from these initial things, concepts, to a holistic definition of what it is, what it's about, what are the challenges and opportunity, and then to identify some of these emerging opportunities for entrepreneurs and corporations. So a lot of times people hear this, they get fearful, they don't know what to make of it. And when I first heard these words, I was like, is this just another window dressing? Is this lipstick on a pig? Is this something else that I need to digest? Or is there something really substantive behind it? And this is where I kind of put on the Xapa tip. And I encourage people to say, be curious, not skeptical, right? Or be skeptical, which is a healthy curiosity or disdain about something until you see the facts, but not cynical. Take your emotions out of it, look at the data and say, wow, this is really interesting. How does this matter to me and what I do? How can I actually find value and opportunity in addressing this reality? Because it's a reality, whether we like it or not. We could choose to run over the cliff, or we could choose to see that we can change the direction of the course of the industry and make significant changes, even while others are not. And I could cite several industries, whether it's Pirelli's leadership in tires, a company that comes to mind, because we were talking with them about circularity and sustainability in tires, and how to take actually something that's essential right now until we have cars that hover and tires that don't wear, and turn them into something that is a net positive for the environment, a net positive for humanity, while still driving revenue and growth for the company, which is an incredible case study for Pirelli. But you don't know Maureen Klein, who's had the sustainability and PR for Pirelli Tires USA. They're an outstanding case study of industry leadership on these issues for in a highly profitable, highly competitive business, and showcasing how their values and virtues on this issue really show a lot of leadership in the market. So I want to reframe the conversation from something that's fearful, something that's viewed as a cost or a challenge or uncertainty, into an opportunity to operate better, to create new jobs, to deliver the value, the promise of capitalism, such that by seeking to be efficient, by seeking to be profitable, and by seeking to deliver value to all the stakeholders along the way, we can elevate the practice of capitalism. We can elevate the wealth benefits and the quality of life benefits in a way that's not an either or with the environment. It's really important that people understand that there is a false choice being told to people about, well, either you have economic growth or you have environmental benefits. It's not true. You do not have to take concessionary returns from investments to do things that are good in balance with the ecosystem of the planet. Sure, we do not have the great models yet for really being able to measure impact returns and financial returns in balance the way that they are, but we're getting there. And companies that have already gone down this path have seen the financial benefits of their activities. They've seen the returns. We see them reflected in their stock prices. You see them reflected in people being happy with where they work. You see people being reflected in people being proud of doing something that's they know is good for themselves, for their environment, for the future. And it leads to happier workers, more engaged workers, less employee turnover. There's all sorts of data on this. I won't be able to get into it, but I will showcase some people and places where you can get more information on it. And we can always talk about it a little bit afterwards. So, some people also, I muted myself by accident. I talk about this from my own personal values too. My family, I didn't know this until not too long ago, but my family has a big branch that is native tribe from the East Coast. So it's part of in our DNA, literally, about thinking about these things this way. I was an Eagle Scout. I'm an Eagle Scout. My Eagle Scout project was about building a recycling program in my hometown. And I see, as a Christian, as a scout, as a human, my responsibility to deliver to the well-being of the planet. I'm a military veteran. I've seen horrible things around the world, incredible challenges from people, from natural and human-made disasters. And I know that those disasters are on the rise, and we have all sorts of examples of them. We can be better in how we design our business, how we operate our business, how we write the rules of policies such that the business and government and nonprofits and startups work together in a collaborative way to move positive action forward on these issues in a way that benefits all of us. I see myself not as a victim, not as helpless, not as unable to do whatever it is that needs to be done to make a change. And the Xapa tip that says, hey, you are what you think. If you believe that you're a leader, if you believe you're a change maker, if you believe that by collaborating with people to solve problems in a different way, in a value-added way, well, then we are who we think. And we can together work on these solutions. Now, in my neck of the woods, in my niche, we are looking for opportunities to connect early stage companies with corporations and NGOs who are looking to solve these problems. Some of the companies I mentioned, in some of the industries that I've already mentioned, I've seen them looking for companies who can help them solve their problems, whether it's a city, whether it's a large corporate delivering a product like tires, whether it's a food company trying to address their waste and health issues to make sure that their product is good for people. And it takes all of us to get into this space that we need to be in. Consumers, once aware, can make better decisions. Consumers, once empowered, can actually create new markets. I work with a group It's called that is working on circularity in clothing. And this is a grassroots organization of women who decided they're not going to buy products that aren't made in a certain way, and they're going to circulate products with each other. I talked to somebody just yesterday who was looking about how to do that for high-end products and how to represent sustainable brands that they're not like fast fashion like a Shein, but they are growing, building, constructing ethically. I've looked at fashion brands that are now considering how they can have different business models so that their product at its end of life doesn't go to waste and landfill, and it's added to the value of the brand. So consumers have a huge opportunity to play. I don't think they're as aware opportunity, and they're aware of their role and their power in here. Scientists and engineers and other experts who are looking for different solutions so that we have more options. I'm looking to talk to a company just last week that looks at taking clothes at the end of life, decomposing them into their constituent chemical components so that they don't go into landfill or become part of the microplastics problem, so on and so forth. Because all of our shirts or all of our clothes, they're not just cotton, they're not just wool, they're blended with a number of different chemicals that make them softer or stretchier or different things. And those things have implications, not only in the manufacturing of those processes and the industrial waste that comes from it, but also at the end of life, whether they become fodder for landfill or whether through deterioration they become problems in the waterborne environment or the airborne environment, like our problem with microplastics that are permeating everywhere on the planet. So everybody has a role in this. For the entrepreneurs, there's all sorts of innovation. We need opportunities, we need test beds, we need investors. We need investors who are going to open up their data, who are going to open up their supply chain and allow us to integrate and help find new business models that are additive to the business in whatever phase it is. And corporations, NGOs, governments, they all have a role, but each group needs to play its role. So we need to have good policy. We need to have good lobbying to make sure that the rules don't stifle creativity. Because I've seen this happen where they stifled innovation because the status quo really wanted to keep it, whether the status quo was an NGO or government or corporation or people who were afraid of change. We need to embrace the fact that change is good, change is positive, and it's value added to the status of humanity on the planet. We have more humans, and I haven't proven this math, but I'm pretty confident that we have more humans now on the planet than we've ever had in history. The carrying capacity of the planet is bigger and it's immense, but we still need to think about the impact of humans on our ecosystem and how we're going to have them in balance such that we can continue to have the beautiful garden that we have and maintain that, and as we grow and expand and evolve. So this is a collective effort for change along these lines. You've heard me talk a little bit about impact returns and financial returns. And this section, I'm going to talk about some easy to understand examples of like 6 categories of financial returns that companies have gained from employing a circular economy type thinking to how they're doing their business. And then I'll dig into some of the metrics and some of the resources we have and some of the leading experts we have about impact returns. So on the circular, the first one we talk about is cost savings, right? How do I save on using less raw materials? We talk about this from virgin plastic or from growing something out of the ground to make clothing. There are a number of different waste reduction areas. But I have a hypothesis that there's probably enough fabric already on the planet that if we thought about circularity in fashion and clothing and came up with engineered innovative solutions, we wouldn't need to grow a lick of anything to clothe humanity. We wouldn't need to take more chemicals from plastics to be able to create the polyethylene or the polypropylene or the different things. We went for advanced materials. Interval, the carpet company. If you think about this, Interface. If you talk about textile innovation, there's a great story about the CEO, Ray Anderson, about how they changed the business of carpet and recycled their material such that this guy is an award-winning, God rest his soul, is an award-winning leader in circular innovation, in changing the industry, in increasing all of the metrics of their corporation, and creating a foundation where they're doing this in other areas. I mentioned that there was a innovation with Pirelli tires in transit. The Ray, that's an experimental highway named after Ray Anderson, is leading experimentations on sustainability in other areas, and this is particularly about highways and transit. There are new revenue streams from circular models. Here's the second one. If you think about, do we have to throw away the cartridges from our printers? Can we refurbish machine engines? I've seen this for heavy equipment. I saw recently a place that's doing it for refrigeration units, for box cars. There's all sorts of value, not only in designing something to be able to be refurbished, but in creating the work there, because it is much easier to add value to something that's already built than build something new from scratch, unless you're bringing in brand new technology that refines the efficiency and reduces the environmental impact. Resale models from furniture to clothing are incredible ways to make sure that at the end of life of one product, the brand has control of the value of the product. The brand can take from just a simple business perspective, can take charge of what's going on, and then they can optimize the experience of the consumer in not a predatory way, but in a positive way. Huge opportunities in terms of resale in these particular areas. Another area what we talk about is increased asset longevity. Some people say that designed obsolescence is great for business. But if you think about the life cycle of the business, and if you think about the use of the product, there are different ways to do it. A pay for owning tires. Why own tires if you could lease the tires? Why own the transit if you could use the service of the transit, and you can make a model so that the business can be constantly optimized? Well, the consumption experience, the consumer's experience, the customer experience is also optimized. We don't have to be stuck in old models. We have great technology that allows us to do that, whether you're leveraging blockchain or whether you're leveraging AI or whichever. There's all sorts of approaches to this. People have gotten in trouble. Clothing companies have gotten in trouble for getting after sustainability programs or circular economy programs and not being able to execute all the way down the chain. But if you're actually working a program to close that and to drive more business, there's an opportunity for reusing products, for thinking about the end of lives of products, or thinking about designs that change the traditional economics in a way that is more sustainable or possibly even regenerative, because you're thinking about, how do I turn the waste into value, or how do I build a fully circular supply chain? Material recovery is tricky. I'm sure everybody has a box of low-grade chargers and cables and stuff in their closet. And I've been thinking about for years how to tackle that. Nobody wants to see their old iPhones or computers go to Bangladesh and see kids on piles of garbage, toxic landfills, pulling apart the iPhone components. And as the cost goes up to extract the materials from the earth to make these products, or the access to rare earth metals becomes more limited because of political challenges, well, recovering the materials that you've got are more important. This Apple program is a good example, but I've seen things where a veteran-led company was trying to extract rare earth from water that's come up from oil and gas, or from mining, or from other processes, because instead of it being pollutant, separating those things out and turning them into materials that can be used for something, it's an amazing thing. Sustainability in footwear is something that I highlight from Adidas, but I also know that Levi's has just designed a sustainable jean model that looks the same as the old model, and it feels the same as the old model, but the materials and the constructions are designed such that when somebody sends it back at the end of its life, they can turn it into another pair of jeans, and they can do it for a comparable or a lower cost because of the materials that they're using. At the very least, they can be in control of the cost because they know how much is out there, how much is coming back, and how to value it. And they have now a more engaged relationship with the consumer, so that they can actually draw back that consumer and have a repeat business with them because they know this person likes jeans every 6 months. This person likes jeans every 6 years. It's just a better way of thinking about one component of your business and one component of your business as part of adding value to the whole business, not just as a cost in the supply chain. As part of my podcast, Revenue Reinvention, I interview leading chief revenue officers on these topics. And when they talk about, what all of them talk about is how to break down the silos between different parts of the business that used to be thinking of sales as revenue generating and customer service or success as cost issues, breaking down those silos and say each of those components is a touch point to the customer. And if each of those is a touch point to the customer, it's an opportunity for information, it's opportunity for value creation, it's opportunity for optimizing resource management and efficiency. So sustainability in footwear, one component of it is how do the materials interacting with the environment, and how are those stakeholders who are assembling or disassembling the product able to work in a healthy work environment. But another component of it is thinking about how do I engage consumers at a number of level, because we could tell you the data, the younger and the more engaged on climate that a consumer is, the more they care about the sustainability and how you operate your business as much as how much the product comes in. There's great opportunities in brand value, loyalty, and growth. I lean into this a little bit. There's some good examples here. And then the last one is, how do I attract investors or to attract funding because of some of the impact areas that I'm working in. Now, can be a bit politicized, and the winds sway back and forth. But in some countries, in some markets, being a sustainable brand is, well, geez, in the EU, it's mandated. The CSRD mandates brands, companies to showcase where their supply chains came from, that their goods were sustainably sourced, that people were fairly paid, that they are monitoring what's going on with the inputs and the outputs and holding them responsible. In the US, extended producer responsibility laws are trying to figure out the right way to protect consumers and to hold brands accountable when they dump the end life of their products onto the public infrastructure. It used to be considered as externalities to an industry. I'm a University of Chicago MBA. I've read Milton Friedman's on capitalism and freedom, and his concept works if you have effective government that provides the rules of the game, and it works across the industry. It doesn't work even across America right now, much less in the global industry. So there is a lot of turmoil in trying to figure out how we make this work. But I also listened to Luigi Zingales, who talks about the value of maximizing shareholder value and maximizing stakeholder value as opposed to maximizing corporate profits as the right way to start thinking about these investment issues. So we're thinking about both the impact and financial returns in the health of the business, in the health of the workers, in the health of the consumers, in the health of the supply chain, and this attracts real value. In some of the ESG-driven funding, these recycled products They can be, depending on the environment, they can be lower cost in the material sourcing alone, but they definitely can be over the lifetime of the product ways to have more control and to more profitability in your business. Now, there are a lot of frameworks around circular economy solutions. I've listed here a number of organizations and organizations and some of the indicators that they look at. Ellen MacArthur Foundation does a great job with this. They have models, they have a great podcast, they do some really amazing work, and they help you understand how to digest this. And all of these are really interesting. That's one that I spend a lot of time with.
Hey, Phil.
Yes.
It's Betty. I want to interrupt for 1 second because I
Mhm.
think we have a really good question
Sure.
about the current environment with the change in power at the president.
Right.
And one of our attendees asked, how does this discussion of sustainability change when we elect someone that does not acknowledge climate change? If you could speak a little bit about the current situation and what this incredible topic is about, but how it's impacted by outside.
Sure. It's an incredible topic, and a critical point. And I would say this: um, if you look at the numbers for the last election, and I did a bunch of research on this just recently. 31.5% of people who voted for president voted for Trump. 30.5% of people who voted for president voted for Harris. 36% of people did not vote for president. Now, some of those people who did not vote for president, they voted for other things, but they either had a protest vote or they didn't vote at all. So there's not a massive mandate, right? First thing. The second thing is just because there are certain people in power doesn't mean that that other 30.5% that they're wrong or that their votes don't matter. So people are going to continue to fight on this. In the EU, this is currently settled. I would encourage people to look at the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. The EU has mandated the reporting and operating standards that will change the way everyone who is going to sell into the EU has to operate. So there are different players in different parts of the world. I don't know what sort of bodies in Africa are addressing this, but there is a lot of this going on. And I talk about this from a perspective that doesn't say anything about climate. It doesn't say anything about how we have to follow on impact. This is just solid business numbers, right? I've looked in detail at the numbers. I'll go back to this food manufacturing company. The cost for their clients to take the waste from processing chickens or hogs or cows and dairy, and to take that waste and ship it to a landfill and to pay it in a landfill just because of the physical constraints of the landfill. It is pure economics of the size. To take that cost instead, just decrease the cost, give them savings, and turn that into a revenue stream for the company is a win-win integrative negotiation. So I think it matters in terms of how we communicate it. I think the words ESG and DEI are like third rail words right now because nobody wants to say them because they'll get blasted from those people who voted for Trump for those issues. But when you talk about those in terms of the things that they care about, and in their language, it becomes palatable. I'll give one very specific example. I had a client a few years back who was looking to take the waste from oil and gas extraction, particularly flare gas off of oil wells, and turn that gas into power for Bitcoin mining rigs. If you've never seen the Permian Basin at night, if you fly over, all you see are these flames. It looks like it's on fire. And what it actually is when you try and extract gas from the oil from the ground, three things come up: water, gas in terms of methane or natural gas, and oil. right? The water is dirty. The natural gas or methane is usually vented to the atmosphere, or sometimes it's flared, as in they light it on fire because it's too far away from anything to generate power or to capture that gas and clean it up and turn it into something. It's really sticky. It's hard to do something of value with. But these guys found a way to clean the gas, to burn it in the generator, and use that generator for power. And I'm like, well, gosh, what am I going to do with the power? Um, this guy was working with came up with an idea. He's like, I'll run a Bitcoin mining rig. And then he told it to another guy, and the guy did a Bitcoin mining rig and remote computing. So they're taking the waste from the gas and they're using that for power and computer to generate storage and compute at the edge. So you have cloud compute everywhere. And Vespine Energy, one of the companies that came out of this, raised several $100 million, and they're growing this around the planet. I say that because what's the backstory? When this guy went to Texas to talk to the governor and Ted Cruz and said, hey, this is the problem. Behind closed doors, they said, this is a real problem. All of our constituents like to hunt and fish. When I see those flames at night, I just think that can't be good. We look at the health problems for different people. We want to make sure this industry is cleaner. We need oil and gas. We need energy. So we need to figure out a way to do it. We love what you're doing. But we're going to say this inside of a room behind closed doors because they don't want to come out off as being leftist or woke or weak or whatever that it is. And I say that because if we can communicate these things to people in messages that matter of how it's good for business and good for everything else, it becomes a whole lot easier. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think that was really well said. We're running out of time and I know that you still have some slides to go to. So here's what I'm recommending. I think that we should make your presentation available and I can send it to everyone so that they can see it. And I want to open the floor to see if there's any other questions, like the question that Maria said, because I think the bridge that you're making is not about climate per se, but how does businesses think about creating a revenue stream and doing environmental good for the planet, right? And how is it a feasible, smart way to operate business?
Absolutely. And let me just pop through the rest of these so that people have context for what's here. These are some of the frameworks I wanted to go over. And this is just some tips on how to get started. We can talk about those in a little more detail if you want to. Some of the organizations that we're dealing with, whether they're circular focused investors, whether they're broader climate or impact investors, or some of the NGOs that we found that were really great. Just some tips on like how to infuse the work with meeting and how to stay focused despite some of the concerns, and how to think about how would you align some of your goals in ways to dig into this in a way that is delivering both those impact and financial returns. And I'll just stop here at this phase, which is a little bit about me and through my networks, and see what questions we've got.
Anybody have any questions for Phil on anything specific, either about your business or about just larger questions as a whole? No? Okay, so Phil, thank you so much for joining our Enrichment series. We thank you very much for explaining all of this to us. It was really, really interesting. Phil, thank you very much for your presentation and for joining us this morning. And happy Valentine's Day to everyone on the call.